This is the inside of something Terry Lovelace says he was taken aboard. He wasn't alone. 50, maybe 60 other people, standing, not moving. Last time on Catskill Liminal Walk, it's 1977. Two off-duty Air Force medics, Terry Lovelace and his buddy Toby, are camping deep off trail in Devil's Den State Park in northwest Arkansas. Their first night at camp, in a meadow atop a plateau, they watch 3 stars silently rise over the western horizon, hanging in a perfect triangle. They're not stars, though. The men are inexplicably unconcerned. On this episode, those lights get a lot closer. The 2 men just watch. Then, without a word between them, the 3 lights start to move, slowly rotating around one another, like they're locked into some invisible formation. And then they start closing the distance. Lovelace remembers the silence most. The crickets, the tree frogs, all of it just gone. 3 pinpricks of light become one massive object. It swallows an entire field of stars, a giant, silent, matte black triangle hanging above their campsite. The lights on each point burn so bright the meadow glows like it's lit by a full moon. Toby aims the flashlight at the object, straight up, and flashes his light a few times. A beam of white light originating from the triangle suddenly responds. The beam appears on the now dead campfire, several feet away from the men. Lovelace describes it as akin to a high-powered searchlight. It stays for 30 seconds, and then it's gone. Next, an intense blue beam, the diameter of a pencil, strikes the campsite. It also originates from the center of the triangle above. The light darts around the campsite, blinking in and out as it moves from one spot to another, with what Terry describes as an almost hypnotic quality. The blue beam lands on the 2 men's bodies at certain points. This continues for 1 to 2 minutes, and then the blue beam vanishes. Then something shifts, not just in the beams that are probing Terry and Toby, but in the men themselves. Terry says a odd, total wave of calm washes over them. It was not relief, something closer to sedation. They move into the tent and lie down on the air mattresses, fully dressed, boots on. They stop being afraid. An unnatural apathy that still bothers Terry Lovelace decades later. The apathy felt all too familiar. These things, whatever they are and whoever they are, controlled our actions and our emotions. Terry Lovelace. Terry falls asleep the moment his head hits the inflated plastic pillow. The next thing Lovelace remembers is waking up, crouched, inside the tent. He's terrified. His entire body is aching, and he's insanely thirsty. Multicolored lights strobe through the canvas of the tent, and a low bass hum vibrates in Terry's chest. A droning noise he at first thinks is a generator. Toby, for his part, is already awake, peering through the tent flap, muttering. When Lovelace finally gets a look outside, he sees it. The triangle craft now sitting just 30 feet above the meadow. Not the size of a house, the size of a 5-story office building. Rows of lit panels and windows running along its sides. And underneath it, figures, small ones, described initially as children, a description used so often in other abduction cases. They're moving in loose little clusters across the meadow floor. A dozen of them, maybe more, moving in groups of 2 or 3. Those ain't little kids. Those are not human beings, Terry. They took you too. They hurt us both. Terry, they hurt us. Toby, as his voice fades into soft sobbing. Lovelace describes flashes of memories erupting in his mind. Memories of being inside the craft itself. If you've reached this point in the video and you want to see part 3, and you also like UFO deep dives like this and want to see more in the future, please hit like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It'd mean a lot to me. Terry describes a seamless black metallic interior, brilliantly lit, the walls etched with symbols he'd never seen before, walkways and support structures unlike anything built on Earth. The scale of it leaves him awestruck. And parked at the far end, aligned in a perfect row, 3 flying saucers. And he's not alone. He counts 50, maybe 60 other people inside, lined up in neat rows, motionless. Later on in his life, he wonders what happened to them, whether they're still even alive. Then, the memory just stops. The next clear thing Lovelace recalls is Toby shaking his shoulder awake, both of them back in the tent. Terry's boots are half laced, as if someone had tried and failed to put them back on exactly the way they found them, fully laced. Out in the meadow, a column of white light pours straight down from the center of the craft's underside, 30 feet across, perfectly round. A visible cylinder of light, Terry calls it. One by one, the small entities step into it, 2, 3 at a time, and disappear. When the last of them is gone, so is the light. Next, the craft rises like a hot air balloon, as Terry characterizes it. It partially rotates clockwise and wobbles slightly, climbing and picking up speed. Soon, it's nothing but 3 dim points of light, high and getting higher. Both men bolt, their belongings and the tent itself left behind, abandoned, never retrieved by them. Terry drives. Toby navigates with a dying flashlight and the hand-drawn map mentioned in episode 1. They're just trying to put distance between themselves and that meadow. Lovelace describes a level of thirst unlike anything he's ever felt in his life. His body aches. He is, by all accounts, extremely unwell. Toby is somehow in worse shape. Once they manage to exit Devil's Den Park, Toby curls up in a semi-fetal position on the passenger seat and is out cold. By the time they reach a gas station, they don't look like 2 guys back from a weekend camping trip. They look like burn victims. The elderly attendant expresses concern for Terry, for his condition. It's obvious that Terry is in bad shape. Terry rushes into the gas stop bathroom. He urinates for an insanely long time. Then he examines himself in the mirror. His whole body is beet red and blistered, sunburn over his full body. No tan lines anywhere, meaning somewhere in that missing stretch of night, he'd been fully exposed to some form of radiation. His swollen eyes are nearly frozen shut. In some places, his skin is black from the burns and bruising. He pulls down his pants at the sink and finds dozens of what he says are angry red sores, evenly dispersed across both legs. Terry describes himself as resembling a smallpox victim. Severe full-body sunburn, no tan lines, dozens of symmetrical red sores on both legs, severe dehydration, temperature of nearly 104 degrees Fahrenheit. The men are ravenously thirsty. Terry buys and drinks an entire 6-pack of orange soda, downing 1 can after another in rapid succession. Toby purchases a gallon of grape drink, and he guzzles the whole thing. Terry's humanity is evident throughout even this part of his experience. He has affection for the old gas station attendant who had empathy for Terry, who offered for Terry even to use his phone for free. I was touched by his concern for our safety. I thought, some people are born with empathy for others, and some are born with none. Terry writes that when he was gulping down his orange soda, he had a possessive, territorial thought that he would not share any of his drink with Toby. He sure as hell isn't drinking any of this. And he immediately felt ashamed for his selfishness, for not caring about Toby's needs in that moment. This is a theme throughout the book: human empathy and compassion, juxtaposed with Terry's sense of the cold disregard of the non-human entities toward their human captives. They make it back to the base, Terry dropping off Toby at his house before returning to his own. Lovelace's wife is in shock when she looks at him. She immediately puts him in a cool bath and hydrates him with lemonade. Within hours, both Terry and Toby are at the base hospital. They learn later that they've been classified as quote-unquote acutely ill. Someone runs a Geiger counter over Terry. Staff have Terry's wife retrieve anything he wore or brought back from the camping trip in a duffel bag with a biohazard symbol. This is where it stops being just a UFO and abduction account. It's where the Air Force Office of Special Investigations comes into play. Anyone familiar with the UFO controversy, the history of the UFO controversy, understands the heavy-handed tactics and intimidation of the Air Force OSI. It's 48 hours later, on the evening of Terry's last night in the hospital. He's still weak and unwell. Two men in civilian clothes walk into the hospital room. OSI agents. Lovelace, a future prosecutor, doesn't mince words describing them. He says how they carried themselves like the Air Force's Gestapo. A nurse tries to intervene because Terry is still very sick. They all but shut the door on her face. Terry is essentially blinded by the bright hospital lights the OSI agents turn on when they enter the room. Terry pleads at one point to postpone this discussion until he's gotten more rest. To no avail. The lead agent is a major with the surname Gregory. Gregory and his partner interrogate Terry about the camping trip, insinuating they know what truly happened. Terry is scared. He doesn't reveal his still fragmented memories of the abduction. The agents tell him he'll be reassigned without explanation. Terry also consents to his home and car being searched, and the agents set some ground rules. You will not speak with Senior Airman Tobias or his family. You will not communicate with them in any way. That means no notes or letters. You will not discuss this incident with anyone at your new duty station or disclose the reason for your reassignment. Are you with me, son? Don't attempt to contact Tobias through a third party either. That means your wife or anyone else. You will not talk about the lights you saw in the sky that night. Not to anyone. That means not to your wife, not your priest, not your mother. No one. Do you understand me? Special Agent Gregory. Before his discharge from the hospital, one of the Air Force doctors feeds Terry an absurd cover story. That the burns he and Toby suffered were from exposure to the sun and naturally occurring radiation in the limestone bluff. That they laid on top of a uranium deposit with their shirts off. That the red spots were bug bites from lying in the grass and not using enough DEET. The Air Force puts him on a medication that Terry, a medic, can't identify, despite searching a physician's desk reference book he has at home. The doctor claims that, quote-unquote, funny dreams are a side effect of the medication, warning Terry not to discuss his dreams with anyone. A nurse then comes to his home every day, her job only to ensure Terry is taking his daily dose of the mystery compounded capsules. Terry notes his rapidly deteriorating memory while on the pills, at one point not even able to remember the day of the week. He secretly discontinues taking the pills, throwing them away. His memory then begins to improve. He's convinced the pills were all but poisoning him. 2 months later, while at his new assignment, the Air Force sends a car to take Terry downtown to OSI headquarters. And this time it's not just an interrogation. It's hypnosis. The hypnotist, an Air Force major whom Lovelace has to address as Brad, administers an injection of some kind of truth serum. Then he puts Terry under hypnosis. Terry writes about how he secretly resists in his own mind, not allowing himself to fall entirely into a hypnotic trance, although the medication is powerful. A tape recorder is running while Gregory and the second OSI agent watch and listen. What comes out under hypnosis is strange and dark. Terry explains that the quote-unquote space people had communicated to Toby where they should camp in order to facilitate their abduction. Up high on the plateau in the meadow because, quote-unquote, that's where they land. Terry recalls that they took him twice, once in the afternoon during their abrupt nap while hiking, and then at night in the tent. The entities, the space people, took blood and sperm from Terry. The monkey men, which we covered in part 1 of this series, come back into play as well. Under hypnosis, Lovelace connects the monkey men directly to what happened in the meadow, describing them now not as some half-remembered childhood nightmare, but as small, non-human entities, disguised to be less frightening to a child. That they were in fact the quote-unquote little gray people. These were non-human entities disguised to fool a child and put them at ease. Terry Lovelace, under hypnosis. Terry describes multiple abductions under hypnosis. In the most recent, when taken with Toby, a giant room full of other captives, and then a colder, clinical space he calls the White Room, restrained on a table, not sedated, fully aware. That's not all. The hypnosis brings something else into focus, an earlier abduction on a ship much, much larger than the Triangle, where the moon is involved. There's also physical evidence left in Terry's body. And Terry describes someone seemingly new and yet old and familiar at the same time. A hybrid visitor who, it turns out, has been present during Terry's abductions throughout his life, since childhood. And that's as far as we're going to get on this episode. What Lovelace describes happening in that White Room, the various non-human entities, and details of an abduction earlier in his life, those are all areas we'll cover in the next episode. It's an amazing world in which we live. Just say that frankly. And I hope you like my hat. Wolverine tear free. See you next time on Catskill Liminal Walk.